Alright, so what do we got here? We're zooming through some development. I'm going through this bunker. I had a comment, oh, you're putting modern elements in. Maybe they're referring to this bunker. Because this concrete stuff, of course they had concrete in World War One. They've had concrete for thousands of years. But here I am making a hole in the side of this because we need a door. We're going to move this radar dome or something to the side because that's in the way. This was the first piece that I could separate out from the solid modeling tools. It was kind of tricky to find where to actually put a door, and of course there was a staircase in the way. So then we were blocked going up the stairs. Well, why are we blocked going up the stairs? It must have been a height requirement I figured out. So something, I'm hitting my head on a ceiling piece there. So we find a way to separate those pieces, and it turns out there was some negatives where you actually place a block to eat away at another block and make a hole in it. And then of course we had these drums hanging around, so I made them into their own folder to organize them, put them outside, put one of them outside so far, organized the light into its own folder, was kind of fixing these pieces here because they're overlapping, and I don't know if that's going to cause artifacts visually in the 3D. We go inside, we're testing it out. That gun should probably not be there, that's not a World War One gun. But everything looks good. So we're going to take this drum, put it in its own, organize that, organize the pieces, put it outside, stick it in the snowbank, and we are cruising around. And at this point, I'm thinking, do I make like maybe you could go 3 different ways and end up in the same place? I don't know. So I was just cruising around the map, kind of looking for some brainstorming, kind of rubber ducking to myself right now. Let's see what we can do. Alright, so now let's add a key and a door. Alright, now I'm just looking around the map, trying to think what next. Let's open the toolbox, start looking at our options for keys and doors that are already made. I had found a tutorial, but we're going to go look at the code here and try and see what's going on. There's something about spawning the key and it like checks continuously if you've taken a key and adds a new one. That's irrelevant. So we find a key and a door, but let's try this other kind of key and a door that has a lock that falls off. The first one, you just kind of open the door and it goes invisible, but I wanted one that was rotating, and I ended up finding this extra mechanism that has a lock that falls off and is really cool. It kind of like has a 6-second timer actually when you're turning the key, so we're going to tune that down eventually. It was kind of annoying every time I'm testing it that it was like 6 seconds. Now this is like a wooden door and we don't want that, but we'll get to that later. Here we're just resizing the walls to match the door. We jump into testing, it takes a minute there. And we're going to test this door. So, you know, what we ended up later using was another asset that I kit bashed into this one, and the rotating door code wouldn't work in terms of moving the door with what you'll see later as the handle. Here we go in, we're testing the gun. You know, before we get to that, we go in here and it's rotating the door the wrong way. You're able to get up the stairs, but we got to fix that door swinging the wrong way. So we jump out of the editor and we're gonna look at our options here. I really should have fast forwarded this code, so I don't know what to tell you. And we're looking at nothing. Great editing. So basically, we do get it all working. I asked the AI later, hey, what can we do with this? Bear with me here because this is just bad editing. But, you know, I had put the code somewhere else to test. I put the key somewhere else to test, you know, having the key somewhere else in the map, and you need to go find it. So here it's in the windmill. You go over in the windmill, you find this key. You're going to run back, right? So here's me testing, running back. I'm really doing a new editing method where I try and like follow along with what I did, but I sort of lost track of what was going on. So I didn't fast forward enough things. So here we're actually, but no, this is good. Here you're going through, you're running across the map. I found a smokestack that I wanted to use somewhere, so like later I looked through some factory stuff and I found some extra stuff. But here we're gonna see, You get the key tool out, it takes 6 seconds, it's way too long, door opens the wrong way, and the padlock falls down on the ground. Okay, good. You're also lean peeking the angle. You know, you don't just barge in after the door's unlocked with your weapon down. You're lean peeking the angle. You're going there could be a bunch of enemies on the staircase. You don't know what's going on in there. So, you know, you're barging in. SWAT, hey, hands up. All right, we're back in the toolkit. Now we're in super fast forward mode, bad editing, and we have the door that we really want to use. And that's where, you know, I kind of talked about it earlier because we might end up fast forwarding through this faster than I want to, but you have to put this where the other door is, and you have to start using the right names that the code expects. And we go through and test it, and there is, what it does is they used a second part that's invisible. Basically they used a second version of the door that is placed where the door should end up, and they use that for the tween. I should actually check why the tween is instant and it doesn't actually animate. It doesn't go in between the two positions and rotate over a period of time. It just sort of snaps out of the way, which is not great. That's not ideal. We don't want that. So, you know, I'm gonna have to look into why that is and try and fix that. But here I'm just trying to fix the door to get these two assets to work together, right? So you kind of have to go into the structure of what's happening, and then I get it moving, but it's not moving the new handle that I have. So I have this bunker door to put on my bunker. It's very nice. It's awesome. Better than a wood door on a concrete bunker. Also, the lag of the startup and stop, and even it starts playing and then it lags out again, and then every time I hit test it's a whole ordeal. But here we go. We gotta wait 6 seconds. I haven't trimmed it down to under 2 seconds yet, but there's a nice little sound. You know, when you play the game, you're gonna hear the nice sounds. Here the door wasn't out of the way, so we got to go in and fix that extra part that's invisible that represents where the other one should be. And I actually just had to rotate it into a weird way because it wasn't working as expected anymore, which is probably due to the way that the, you know, the steel bunker door asset was rotated and set up. It had an extra 90 degrees, even though it looked like it's facing the same way as the other part. There was probably something off, and that's why there was the difference, that it didn't work really right out of the box. But we go ahead and we eventually get that cleaned up. We get the well, first we'll clean up this, but we'll get to the handle later. And how we moved the handle as a child element under was we used pivot 2 instead of just setting the position and rotation of the door, just the door, because it didn't do anything with the children in the hierarchy on the tree. So, you know, here I am asking the AI, and I always put, if I don't want changes, I say, you know, without changing anything, how are we going to do this? It told me you're going to use pivot 2. So I said, hey, AI, use the pivot 2. I don't think it worked when it tried to do it. It actually didn't change any code, I don't think. So I copy pasted the code that it gave me. It actually kind of bungled the response for some of the code that it gave me, because it said if it's a model, use this code. If it's a part, use this code. So you could have two different setups. And it actually messed up the second one because the asset pack is called door, and then the door part under it was called door, so you have to do door.door. Anyway, stupid long story. Here I am swapping out the machine gun and getting rid of this World War II machine gun. I'm sure they must have had some concrete something in World War One. Maybe this is not. Maybe the concrete bunker isn't realistic, but they must have had something. They must have had something made of concrete. So I'm going to have to do the research on that. But since I had the extra smokestack, you know, I started getting into buildings, and I ended up checking out this like apartment building, which was actually really cool. You get to see that you just pass through doors and everything worked. This was a surprise. I didn't even think that it had buildings inside, but you could go walk through all the rooms. It's really nice. On the bottom floor, when I fired the gun, I got stuck in the chairs, and this was an issue. So if I'm going to use that in the game, I'm going to have to do some extra collision parts, walls, panels around the chairs so you don't get stuck in the chairs. And then I was just trying to use something to get these smokestacks on top of something that I could use. So I need something that looked like it belonged there. Here we are, we finally found some smokestacks, and that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. In the meantime, I found another factory that has a smokestack. So those will be a certain area of the game at some point. Stoked about that. That's nice. Very exciting. Very good. And that almost wraps it up. We're just going to put them in the right places. And, there's nothing finalized. We're just kind of getting the pieces ready to do something with. So anyway, thanks for watching. We're going to do a whole bit more tomorrow. We're going to keep it going. Eventually, we're going to get to the NPCs, and that's the fun part. All right, see you soon, Carl German.